Are we in line for an offensive renaissance in the Valley? And what are the next 2 weeks going to bring with Chicago and the Jets coming into town ahead of the Cardinals bye week? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Whether it's your first listen, you've been an everydayer like Ed Romero, I haven't shouted you out in a couple seasons. You deserve it. You were patient zero when it came to everydayers. So you get your shout out, dude. Been in sports radio here since 2011. This is my 8th year hosting this podcast. It gets better and better. I told you the season was going to be exciting. I mentioned yesterday that removing Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury ushered in the world of possibility and opportunity, and that's exactly what we get every week watching this damn team. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I teased yesterday who I was going to have on today, so it's no surprise if you listened like you should have yesterday. Donnie Druin, Sports Illustrated, one of my buddies. He does the hard work, so I don't have to. So I'd rather just have him talk and then me listen. And, yeah, it's a great relationship. It's not selfish at all for me. You know, it really isn't. I don't have to drive to practice every day like I used to. I don't have to do any of that. Donnie does it for me. Thanks for joining me, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I wouldn't call it hard work, man. I've done a lot more for a lot less, so I really can't complain.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess that's fair. Okay, so I took a step back, and kind of discussed what happened on Sunday with the offense. And it's hard to not get a little giddy when you see things start to come to form, especially on the road, especially short week, especially against a pass defense that was, stingy up until this past weekend. What worked? Like, why did we see something different this past week than we saw in weeks past?
I think for majority of the early part of the season, we saw the lack of preseason reps come to fruition. We saw a lot of mistiming between Kyler Murray and a lot of his pass catchers. And the bread and butter of this offense, Alex, is running the football. And, not only do they love to establish the run, that's how they open up the pass game. The play action is such a huge part of this offense. And what really took me by surprise is that this was the first game in Miami where I really looked at an offense and said they didn't need to run the ball in order to move the ball down the field and in order to find success. James Conner, 53 yards on 20 attempts. We saw Kyler Murray's first 300-yard game, and it feels like we have been waiting. And it feels like slowly but surely throughout the early part of the season, they've been finding what works, what hasn't worked. And you said it before we started recording. It looks like they've been in the lab. It looks like they finally have had enough evidence to say, okay, you know what? We need to sit down. Let's see what we're good at. Let's see what we're not good at. Let's throw that out and let's find something we can connect on. And I brought it up a little bit earlier, and I'll say it again. The fact that they organically did this without having to rely on the defense being brought up to contain James Conner, I think speaks leaps and bounds to where this offense can go. I'm a little hesitant to see if this will continue on a week-to-week basis because more than anything, this Cardinals offense is shown to be very up and down. I'm so curious to see how the next 2 weeks look before the bye week comes.
Yeah, it was just nice to see what the in a vacuum perfection looked like through, for 2.5 quarters after a dismal first quarter. Donnie Druin, Sports Illustrated, at Donnie Druin on Twitter, joining me here, Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. And I discussed it. It's like, this is a run-first offense. Doesn't have to be. I mean, I feel like when Drew Petzing came in, those were the training wheels. James Conner, the offensive line was improved with Yalta Froholt. And, it was something that was the only way the Cardinals are going to be able to put up a non-embarrassing product during the first chunk of last season with Kyler Murray out and pretty much the entire team devoid of real talent. And now James Conner 20 for 50 with a touchdown, but it wasn't necessary to move the ball, as you mentioned. Now, chicken or the egg scenario. Is Trey McBride unlocking Marvin Harrison Jr., or is this something where it's like simultaneously helping each other with space because they're lining up on different sides of the field. I mean, Trey McBride's usually on the inside, Marvin Harrison Jr. usually on the outside. Is it kind of a simultaneous positive perfect storm where now it's like, oh, bleep, how do you stop both of these guys?
Yeah, but before the season, Kyler had talked about how he wanted this offense to be a pick your poison offense, how there's weapons all across the board, up and down the receiving core. You have Trey McBride in the middle. Obviously, we talked about James Conner, his rushing ability. And then we haven't even talked about Kyler's ability to move the ball with his own legs, too. At a certain point, like you can't double team Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Like to game plan for both of those guys, as premier talented as those guys can be, I think it's so tough. It's got to keep defensive coordinators up at the potential of what those guys can do on a weekly basis. Now the Cardinals are just 4-4. It's not like Arizona has unlocked some generational duo, but you say that those two can not only help each other, but help themselves by Trey McBride catching everything over the middle possible. I mean, his body control, his hands, what he can do after the catch is phenomenal. And that it seems like we finally figured out that Marvin Harrison Jr. does not need to run just go routes at every other play. You can use him horizontally. You know, he can make catches whenever he needs to. He torched one of the game's best cornerbacks in Jalen Ramsey on a crossing route that started on the left side of the field, ended in the right corner of the end zone. To answer your question, Alex, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's just like, we finally saw what that offense looked like, all cylinders firing, and like one person's success, I think, just opens everything else up too, because we saw Michael Wilson had a pretty decent game besides not being targeted more than like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that we did see, and it's becoming obvious now, a handful of the touchdowns that Marvin Harrison Jr. was caught outside of the Rams game where there were 2 broken plays for touchdowns is those crossing routes. Those timing routes where Kyler Murray throws the ball only where Marvin Harrison Jr. can catch it. We see now that Marvin Harrison Jr. at the NFL level can catch everything like he did in college. Like he had the announcers wowed with that catch, that crossing route. And also he went across the middle. He took a big hit. He held onto the ball and got right back up. Like the beauty of what we saw from him on Sunday was, first of all, the fact that Kyler Murray got it to him in space, which was really the first time this year where it was strung together throughout the course of 3/4 of a game, but also that he makes all the catches, he can run all the routes, and it's something that if you can truly unlock him as the bona fide first option on this offense, it would be so much scarier of an offense if James Conner doesn't have to be the first option, if Trey McBride doesn't have to be the first option, which is why you draft a guy like that, number 4 overall, and I think we both agree on that. Now, with Kyler Murray, a couple batted balls early on. Okay, we saw the slow nature of a team on a short week traveling cross country to Miami. Now, we saw this also against Detroit. We saw it again. We've seen it all over the course of the season. Is it Drew Petzing's job to have this pocket roll out to the left or to the right so he's not getting balls batted down like we've seen with such frequency? Or is this on Kyler Murray and the offensive line maybe to build a deeper pocket for him? Like, he's 5'10". He's never going to be taller than that. How do they fix the batted ball problem?
That's tough. I think it's got to be a mix or combination of both, but my only qualm with rolling Kyler out is that you are basically eliminating one side of the field, and you are limiting everything to either his left or his right side. And I think a lot of Kyler Murray's best plays comes when he's improvising, comes when he's able to scramble either left or right and make stuff happen in space, whether that's behind the line of scrimmage or wherever it might be. That's my only qualm, is you take a little bit of that magical possibility out. Counterpoint, though, you're not going to see a lot of those batted balls. Murray is a very talented runner, so he can either pick up a first down with his legs or he'll find somebody open if a defender decides to come and try to attack Kyler Murray. But they've got to find that balance, and that's why Drew is an offensive coordinator, and that's why we're 2 guys talking on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. No, and I get that. But, I mean, it seems like so – things like this happen and they become problems. But put it this way, Brock Osweiler had more balls batted down in 1 year, in Kyler Murray's 1 year at Oklahoma, that same year when I think he was with Houston. Brock Osweiler was 6'7" or 6'6". So it's not just, the size.
Yeah.
I think it's something that Kyler Murray needs to have a wrinkle here, maybe a little pump fake. Maybe throw screen passes underhanded. Who cares? As long as the screen passes are opened up before that ball with a big paw from a defensive end or an edge rusher bats it down. We've seen 2 interceptions that way this year. One to Nick Bosa and one that the Cardinals were able to get back against the Chargers. It's got to be something that's got to be figured out. We can talk about it forever. Trade deadline stuff. Let's nerd out for a little bit. I'm gonna put you through an exercise, and I put the everydayers through yesterday. I want to see what you think, or if you just think I'm crazy, I don't know. It's 50-50. We'll discuss it next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by our friends at Built Rewards. And listen, when it comes to Built Rewards, it's something that, okay, let's just start with Built Points, okay? Built Points can be used toward flights, hotels, your next rent payment, or even a down payment on a future home. You can sign up, you learn more, and let me walk you through this. Ever feel like you're stuck in the loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn the rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards come in. Bill is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Bill points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation, put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. Pay your rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built Rewards has been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Join built.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked on Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. Turn notifications on. It's been exciting. It's going to continue to be exciting. One of the best we have here in the Valley. Donnie, Druin, Sports Illustrated joins me. Part of the 1%er club on Twitter at first name, last name. Have I told you about this? That my reward for this? This is something I shout out. There's like when Mina Kimes came on the first time, I'm like, Mina, listen, it's cool to have you. ESPN, that's awesome. Do you know you're a 1%er? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, at first name, last name. I don't care your stature. If you can do that in this space, it's pretty impressive. So kudos to you for getting lucky, not having to put a 1 or 2 next to your name. Trade moves. This has been a point of contention. Fans, mostly. A lot on Twitter. Monty, make a move. Monty, make a move. Monty, make a move. Stop sitting on your hands. Stop being lazy. Win this year, not next year. And don't wait for next year. The Cardinals have the money. They have the capital. I'm going to run you through this exercise really quickly. I want you to give me your extended thoughts. I talked yesterday about what the Cardinals could potentially do in a vacuum if they wanted to. And I mentioned you could trade for Max Crosby and the money may not totally the idea to pluck 1 or 2 bad situations across over. They've got 100 and they've got all. You think Ossenfort should do if he were to make the trade deadline?
I think they should stick to the plan. I think it is so very easy to get caught up in looking at a 4-4 football team who is first in the division. I think the Cardinals obviously have the cap space. They have the draft ammo to go and get the aforementioned guys, like you had said. I think there's a very structured plan. I think that is why the Cardinals rebuild is going so far so good, is because the Cardinals did not convince themselves they were X, Y, or Z away from competing in 2024. I don't think a 4-4 start to the season should change that. That being said, I do think watching Uche, is that how you say his name, from New England, watching him go for such a low pick did hurt a little bit. I'm so intrigued to see if they try to go after BJ's brother, Azeez Ojulari, from the New York Giants. Not to say value shopping, because we've seen what value shopping got the Cardinals this offseason. Granted, Justin Jones and Blau Nichols, they got hurt. Sean Murphy-Bunting currently hurt. But the small performances we did see from them wasn't exactly convincing that the Cardinals got a lot of bang for their buck outside like Mac Wilson. I don't think value shopping is the way to go. I just don't think any major moves should be done right now. I definitely think the Cardinals want to see how the rest of 2024 goes. I think next offseason, I don't know if we talked about this. I think next offseason is the window where you say, okay, you know what? We finished 8-9. we know what this football team is. Let's make a splash. Let's make a move. Let's push ourselves into contending territory. I still think that's the timeline. I still think that's the schedule. I don't foresee any big, massive moves. I don't think they should make any big, massive moves. And if I'm Monti Ossenfort, I'm trying to see what's available out there, but I am not mortgaging any serious future draft capital or any future salary cap space right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I get that, and I was there pretty much until this past week. I was there pretty much until the Charger game. It's like, oh, the Chargers, okay, so if they're 3-4, if they somehow go to Miami and get a win, we're having a different conversation, though. Like, this isn't week one conversation. This is a team that's leading the division. So it's like, okay, sure. The plan before this was, oh, if they win 7 games, it's a success. And then you go spend the money next offseason. Then you have draft, everything like that. What I can't wrap my head around anymore is this team doesn't need to get younger. This team needs good players. So, yes, you've got all your draft capital. That's awesome. Trade it. You've got, why not? And maybe just because that was the plan, not for the Cardinals to 8 weeks. This is not now the why and do something different. Not a force. The Cowboys got the offense. So why wait?
I would agree. I think it can be a coin flip. My only contention with making a move is I don't think the Cardinals right now are 1-star pass rusher away. I do not think they are one Max Crosby away. That's a big step in the right direction. But Monti Ossenfort has been so sold on building this team through the draft. And honestly, man, people gave Ossenfort a lot of flack over the offseason for not going to get big fish like Christian Wilkins, right? Yeah. Everybody in the Valley wanted Christian Wilkins here on this roster. That turned out to be a great non-move, right? Yeah. Christian Wilkins, I think, is on a different level than Myles Garrett, lower than Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, whoever else you could possibly get. I just think this thing is so timeline driven, and they are so intent on building through the draft that it's just not that it doesn't make sense. But I just do not see Monti Ossenfort pulling the trigger on a monster trade like that.
Yeah, and I get it. Listen, I was on that side, and I was on that side for 60% of this season. Yep. I just had this thought like, well, and I think any person who is on one side of an argument, the only way you can stand tough on that is if you can argue the other side. So I'm looking at the other side like, okay, what do other teams do ahead of the trade deadline that may have come into some currency regarding wins during a certain season that wasn't expected? And you're looking at guys that already have contracts. You're not trading a first-round pick for a 1-year rental, things like that, where it's like good players are expensive regardless if it's via trade or in free agency. So if you can strike and you can look at the NFC West with the 49ers are disheveled. The Rams or the Seahawks and Geno Smith aren't where they need to be, especially with injuries. You know, the Rams are still the most formidable team, in my opinion, in the NFC West this year. Like, nobody expected the Cardinals to be here, so why not have a different thought process? That's all I'm thinking. And it's more of an exercise than anything, but free agency, you have to compete with the other 31 teams, or 30 teams, I guess, because the players on that team. With trade, if you have more capital and more assets than the majority of other teams, you win. You win a top-tier talent. And to your point, and this is something that I struggled with also, I think the Cardinals may be one Max Crosby away. And not to the point of a top 5 defense, but to the point of being able to hold water enough for the offense to carry the charge, where you don't worry about having to punt because the defense can't get off the field on 3rd and 13, 11 for 15 last week against Miami. It's that 0-1 jump that the Cardinals don't have. That's why I think one piece away now at 4-4, it's not as important to be one piece away as it was when they were 2-4. It's like, well, why would you trade for anybody now?
I would agree. And to side on your argument, Alex, I think we are far past hey, you know what? The Cardinals could use a top pick, right? Like they could go get a Travis Hunter. They can go get
that's a bad thing now.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoever. That was acceptable the offseason. Cliff got fired. That was acceptable last offseason. But if we talked about making progress, if we talked about wanting to see this team go from point A to point B and take the necessary steps, I don't think they should be targeting through the draft. I think they should be building through the draft. I think that's where the foundation of good and great football teams are made. I don't want to see the Cardinals be these perennial Jacksonville Jaguar free agency spenders, because we've seen how that experiment turns out and it doesn't work for anybody.
Right.
That being said, I do think, like you said, talent, it comes at a premium, no matter where you get it, free agency, the trade market, or wherever. I think a premier edge rusher next to a healthy Darius Robinson and hopefully a BJ Ojulari who can bounce back would be phenomenal. I still have a lot of worries about the secondary outside of Garrett Williams. I want to see if Budda Baker sticks around long-term. I would love for them to ink him to an extension. Same with James Conner. Same with Kaiser White, who's also due to be a free agent this offseason. There's still a lot of moving parts for me to say, you know what? I don't know if I necessarily agree with going to get a big fish guy, but also on the other side of the token, you don't just improve your defense by taking small chances. If you go get a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, you know what you're getting. You know you're getting a top 5 player on the defensive side of the ball in the National Football League. And I would rather have top 5 guys than not top 5 guys. But
and one last thing before we pivot here for the next couple weeks 9 and 10, 2 home games for the Cardinals ahead of their bye is, this isn't just bringing J.J. Watt in to change the culture. This isn't bringing somebody in just because he's a big name. The Cardinals are very close to seeing what they like. I think Max Melton's got a raw deal this year. I mean, no pass rush for a rookie. I think cornerback's the toughest position to play in football. Garrett Williams, we knew, was probably a fringe first-round pick if he didn't tear his ACL at Syracuse around Christmas time, where he was going to miss the majority of his rookie season anyways. Like, this is a piece, a cog in the machine that they're looking for, not just a guy to make a splash signing because the Cardinals need some buzz on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. They're so much closer than a lot of defenses in the NFL. They're so much closer than I think we've given them credit for. They blanked the 49ers. They blanked the Lions in the second half of 2 games. Okay. They held a high-powered Miami offense normally with Tua Tagovailoa to 27 points. Like, this is a team that when they're good, they're one player away. And it's on the front. It's either interior or the outside, or off the edge. We'll see if Darius Robinson can fill that gap a little bit, but it'll be fascinating to see what Monti Ossenfort does. What does the outlook look like? Darius Robinson coming back this Sunday, most likely. Can the kid pop right away and make this defense a lot better right out the gate? We'll discuss it next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I went little everything you got there. That was weird. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sports app gives you everything you need to place your live bets on the NFL, all in one place, man. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. So say you want to bet some cheese on the Cardinals and Bears on Sunday, and it's the middle of the game, and you're like, ooh, let's look at the stats. Ooh, let's look at James Conner's yards per carry. Ooh, let's look at the targets Marvin Harrison Jr. has, and you want to place a little cheese on it. You can see all those stats in real time right where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Final segment here. Donnie, Druin, my buddy over at Sports Illustrated, joins me. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Again, please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. Doing crossover Thursday with Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears tomorrow. That should be a fun one. Listen, the Bears are coming off an emotional roller coaster. The Jets are coming off a Travis Sham mockery that is their season. I think the Jets worry me a little bit more just because of the roster they have on offense. I think the Chicago Bears defense worries me more than the Jets defense currently. They're 2 weeks away from their bye week. Week 11 is like the perfect time for a bye.
Yeah.
It's like the chef's kiss. Do you see Donnie join Sports Illustrated 4-6, 5-5, 6-4.
I would love to see them go 5-5. Obviously, I would love to see them go 6-4. I think I would happily take a split with two very tough defenses in the Bears and the Jets coming to State Farm Stadium in the next 2 weeks. To sit at 5-5, hit that bye week, and kind of regroup, reorganize, take your foot off the gas a little bit, and just gear up for that second half of the season run, I think would be so key. The Bears worry me a little bit more than the Jets, and I did not think I would be saying this ahead of the season. The Jets were a dumpster fire by all accounts. Don't care if they have Aaron Rodgers. Don't care if they have Devontae Adams. That is a train wreck right now. It is so odd to see how much further the Cardinals are compared to the Jets, and just in terms of everything. The Bears, I think, have a very underrated roster, both offensively and defensively. For me, it depends on which Caleb Williams shows up. Are we going to get the rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams, or are we going to get the generational prospect a lot of people here wanted the Cardinals to take before Kyler Murray came and kind of established himself again as the franchise guy? I'm still a little bit worried about the defense. I know you highlighted they blanked the Niners and the Lions in the second half. They held a potent Dolphins offense that can go for 40 basically any week on their track team down there, to only 27 points. I'm still holding my breath only because this team, Alex, has been so different on a week-to-week basis, and like that's what holds me back. They for sure can do it. I am not doubting them at all. I just want to see a little bit more consistency before I really start picking win after win after win on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, one perk that they have to these 2 weeks is two pretty bad offensive lines that they're going to be facing. Now, their pass rush is probably worse. Darius Robinson coming back. I think that going into the season, I said this season would be a success if they were on the in the hunt overlay in week 13 or 14. That means this season is a success, and that's an under 500 record a lot of times. 6-7, 5-7 in the hunt. Now we've seen the AFC is an absolute train wreck, and the NFC is deeper than we've seen in the last handful of years, which doesn't help. But if the Cardinals go 5, like they have to avoid 4-6 because the momentum for a week of not playing after losing 2 home games, that would be difficult to come back from, even if their schedule lightens up. But you're looking at 2 not great offensive lines, average to somewhat below average with the Bears and the Jets. Darius Robinson coming back. I talked a little bit about this yesterday, gave my thoughts. Not what you hope, not what you think will happen. What are the expectations for him if he's set to play his first NFL game come Sunday?
If you're asking the Cardinals what the expectations are, I don't think they have any. I think we're looking at a guy who started out the season on injured reserve with a calf injury, and then he recently lost his mother. I think they just want to see him on a football field, and then they'll be more than happy to build from the ground up going from there. That being said, though, if Darius Robinson looks anything close to the football player that we saw with our own eyes in training camp and preseason, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a very, very good time. I don't expect him to do that right away. It's so hard to just drop yourself in the middle of a football season, and especially as a rookie, when you haven't played a meaningful snap all year, bad offensive line or not. But the raw talent that we have seen, his ability to disrupt plays both in the run and the passing game, if we even get a sprinkle of that on the radar, I think fans should be incredibly excited for what's to come, because people talk about Marv and how process-driven he is and how much of a hard worker he is, and very understandably so, because he deserves all that praise. Darius Robinson is not far behind. I mean, we're talking about a guy who for 5 minutes after being drafted talked about hand placement during his interview with ESPN. Like, he's a sicko. He's a sicko. He's addicted to the process. He's a stickler for the details. I think that's what can make him go from good to great very, very quickly. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. First game coming back, just go out and play. Go out and play football, brother, and we'll handle it from there. Yeah,
you're a little bit lighter than me. All I said was, no, he's not ready for the NFL game moments. And I don't think that that's something we'll see. You know, I alluded to Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons, 2 preseasons worth. Their second year during the preseason, they look lost. So all you want to see is Darius Robinson hit somebody, not get pancaked, and maybe get a pressure on the quarterback. You're like, okay, proof of concept. He's ready for the NFL stage and giddy up from there. And it's funny, like now, it's funny that he's coming back now in the sense that we have enough sample size on Monti Ossenfort's drafts over the last 2 seasons that's like, okay, Darius Robinson was the least sexy name chosen in the first round. We also know when we saw the no-fly zone, we saw the Cardinals thing in the draft room, that Monti Ossenfort was counting down picks until their pick, hoping that nobody would take Darius Robinson. So you see what Monti Ossenfort has done. Paris Johnson Jr., left tackle for the next decade. Okay, Bijah Ojolari was showing flashes at ACL. Garrett Williams, lockdown corner. Okay, John Gaines has shown flashes. Dante Stills, 6th-round pick, maybe the best interior defensive lineman the Cardinals have. Marvin Harrison Jr., Max Melton has shown flashes. Tip Ryman's been fine. Trey Benson's a little bit because he's a backup. If there's a trend there, Darius Robinson's going to be a stud.
Yeah.
You know, so that's something that I'm fascinated to see. I could do another hour with you, but I don't want to get yelled at. So we got to jet. Donnie, tell people where they can find you before we get out of here.
Yeah, at Donnie Druin on Twitter, as the cool kids call it, X, and then follow our work at si.com/NFL/Cardinals.
Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Crossover Thursday with Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears tomorrow. Remember, without you, there is nothing. I'll talk to you then.